when you have someone in your life and all of a sudden, out of the blue, they start acting distant with you. It can be a really confusing experience. Maybe they just simply aren't talking to you like they normally do. Maybe they keep the conversations really brief and they don't go into any detail, or maybe they don't seem to want to share anything kind of emotional with you. So you feel like, wait, what's really going on? How are you really? They don't seem to want to tell you. Maybe they're not getting back to you like they normally would. Maybe they're not taking your phone calls or responding to your text messages. Or if they do, they sort of respond in a very brief way and it feels really limited and it's making you feel uncomfortable. Why? Because when somebody changes their behavior and you're used to them acting a certain way, you notice the difference. In fact, you register the difference. Sometimes you can even feel it in your central nervous system. You can notice that gap, that distance, that discrepancy between how they used to be, how they normally act, and what's going on now. You might feel a little anxious, or you might even notice feeling a little down, or maybe a little preoccupied. For some people in this situation, they may kind of keep replaying in their mind possible scenarios. What is going on? Well, let me just share a few examples of some of the reasons why a person may suddenly become distant. Now, one of the reasons is because they are dealing with something emotional and they're not really ready to talk about it. They simply don't want to talk about it. And so they avoid interactions with people. And in this case, possibly they avoid interactions with you so that they don't have to get into it, don't have to face whatever it is emotional that they're going through. Another reason, though, is that a lot of times people become distant because they themselves don't actually know how they're feeling. Sometimes, think about this yourself. Haven't you ever had situations where you feel like, maybe you feel like you're not yourself? Your mood is off. Somehow you can tell you're not yourself and something's different, but you can't exactly put your finger on why. Feelings, I think, are really confusing, which is why I've dedicated a whole channel on YouTube to helping us understand them better. But it's really important to understand that a lot of times when people are dealing with a mix of emotions, especially negative emotions they may feel, sadness, anger, maybe depression, a lot of times it takes them a minute. It takes us all a minute sometimes to figure out, to process what the heck it is we're even feeling. So that is one of the reasons sometimes why a person may become distant, may act like they are distant from you. It's not personal to you in some cases. It's actually just a reflection on they are sort of in a pause mode internally where they are trying to process something emotionally. And they're not that great at it. A lot of people aren't that good. It takes them a good minute to process their feelings, to process their thoughts. So that's something to remember. Now, another reason why sometimes people may become distant is because somehow a relationship may have started feeling a little bit too emotionally intense for them, may have felt a little bit too emotionally intimate, emotionally connected, too close, too intense. And if that person has a history where they've had relationships where they don't necessarily feel like it's safe to trust people or that it's safe to be too close to people, well, having moments with you or somebody else where they do feel really good and connected and close, that can actually feel scary and intimidating for some people. So for some people, it's almost like a little threat alert. E, goes up, and they need to kind of retreat and withdraw from any kind of close relationship for the moment to get themselves back to a baseline where they feel like, okay, I'm secure, I'm safe again. That's another reason. And then the final reason that I'll review here is there may be something going on in that individual's life that is making them feel like something is out of order. Something is making them feel anxious. There may be some uncertainty in their life. Something is really up in the air, and it's making them feel like things are a little chaotic and they're having a hard time controlling and managing what's going on. So, the way a lot of people manage anxiety, when they get in situations like this is to shut some other things around them off, and they kind of go into a hyper focus mode. It's almost like a sort of threat, hyper vigilant response. They have a difficult time kind of just integrating and managing everything, all the different competing demands going on in their life. And they tend to over focus, or what I would say, they tend to become hyper preoccupied with what is making them anxious. And it's like with any of us, anytime any of us become very preoccupied with one thing in our lives, it means that we simply don't have the bandwidth, the emotional, mental bandwidth to focus on, to handle everything else going on in our lives at the same times. So those are a few different reasons. Here's a really important question, though. I want to ask you, if somebody in your life has become suddenly distant, are you sure you are clear on how you are feeling about it? So the person that you may be thinking about in your life who may have suddenly become distant, what is the main feeling that this is causing you to have? And you know what? I'm pausing there because odds are you may not have thought about that. That is so common for people who get so stuck in a reactionary stance to something going on in their life to forget to say, wait a minute, can I first identify the feeling that I am having about this? Well, if somebody in your life who you're used to having a certain closeness with suddenly becomes distant, it would be pretty normal if, as a result, you maybe started feeling a little anxious, a little nervous. Maybe you feel sad. Maybe you feel irritated or even a little angry, like, that's not right. You can't treat me that way. You can't just all of a sudden, just decide you don't want to talk to me. These are a lot of the feelings that you can have. But a common feeling that this causes in so many people is an alarmist reaction. Alarmist. To go into a sort of panic, to go into a sort of, what might this mean? Especially people who have histories where somebody has maybe just walked out or walked away or neglected them or didn't really talk things through with them. If you have a history of relationships like that, any kind of change in a relationship like this can be really stressful. So going into an alarmist reaction, in some ways, it's understandable, but remember, it's not good for you. It's not going to serve you. And a lot of times, you can end up working yourself up into a frenzy of an alarm state for nothing when there was no need to. So one of the best ways to prevent yourself from giving into an alarm state, okay, from going from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds to that nervous, anxious, what are they doing? What does this mean? Trying to figure everything out and control the outcome rather than do that. What helps is to make sure you're clear on the root feeling that this causes in you. Are you anxious, or are you just neutrally kind of noticing and observing the behavior? That is the goal. That is the goal, to think to yourself, I notice there's a change. To say to yourself, to think thoughts like this, I'm not sure what it means. Why? Because it could mean many different things, and I simply don't know. I don't have enough information at this point. So, what I will do is pause. I will pause in an emotionally neutral fashion. Now, it's also helpful to say to yourself this: one thing I will not do is engage in fortune telling. Now, fortune telling, according to cognitive behavior therapy, is one of the most severe and common cognitive distortions, sort of mental thinking traps that people get in that don't serve them, that are not good for them, that distort reality. So if you engage in fortune telling, what you're trying to say is, well, I know what this means. This means that they don't want to be my friend anymore. Or I know because this happened to me before with somebody else. I know this is always what happens before somebody leaves me. See, this is fortune telling. So the goal, remember, is to be emotionally neutral and also make your thoughts neutral too, to say, I don't have enough information yet. What I will do is I will give that person some space. I'll give them a day. Sometimes people just need a little space. Give them a day, and you can also benefit from a good night's sleep and have a little bit more perspective the next day when you do maybe talk to them about it. I'm Dr. Seth, psychologist.